Greetings, friends. Welcome back to another episode of the Wormhole Manifest podcast. You guys, if you've listened before, you know the deal. I like to interview different guests every show and bring back some original guests that have been on previously and, to get some good info out there, figure out who they are, what's going on in the world, and all that. The reason for the Wormhole Manifest is I am the Wormhole. The Wormhole is a thing that can help you traverse space and time. Once your name is on the manifest, just as if you're traveling anywhere, the journey through the wormhole will begin. And wherever we come out, that's always sure to be entertaining and an educational adventure. So without further ado, tonight's guest, you should know already. He's been here several times. And I'm always happy to have him back. I'd like to welcome back Jay Jones,
Yay.
aka _J from the Frown Town podcast. Welcome back, Jay. Thanks for joining me again.
Thank you for having me.
What have you
back.
been up to?
Oh man, so much. No, actually, I'm happy to be back. I'm actually kind of doing a lot of the same stuff. Stand up is still going pretty well. I guess since last time I was here, I started a show in Seattle. So I don't know if I told you that.
Ooh.
Yeah, so I have a show that's going in Seattle that happens every month. It's called The Blackout. It's the only all black comedy showcase in Seattle.
Wow.
It also might be the first one. I am not sure if there's ever been one before this, but for right now, I'm claiming it as the first one. This is our fifth show coming up in August on the 25th, and we have sold out every show so far, though there are still tickets left for August because it's on the 25th. But so far, we've sold out every show. So, that's been going pretty well. Yeah, that's been going pretty well. A lot of time and energy been going into that. And then obviously Frown Town been going pretty well. We got, I think we kind of hit a stride. We're at like episode 127 or 128, depending upon whether or not I get the numbering correct. But no, that's been going pretty well. And then, stand up is going pretty well. I got gigs pretty much all over Seattle. August is going to be a little slower now because I've ran through all of my stuff earlier. So I had a bunch of sets and gigs earlier in the month. And now I have like one left that's happening actually tomorrow. So by the time you hear this, it's probably going to be too late. And the next ones are all in September. But that is all going to be up. Actually, I think it's up now on, if you go to jjonescomedy.com, you can see all that. So yeah, busy, doing a lot of stuff.
That's awesome, man.
Yeah.
I'm glad to hear that everything's going well. Like, I know that, I mentioned the episode numbering, and I was like, I felt bad because I haven't listened in so long. And me and my wife Rachel were like, I was checking it out earlier. I'm like, okay, how far are we behind now? Because for a while we were keeping up with it pretty good, especially at the the beginning of the pandemic and everything.
When we were doing 2 episodes a week. I don't know how you were doing that. I don't know how we were doing it. It was a lot.
I mean, the whole pandemic thing was just like, listening to your show, honestly, was what was really inspiring me to get back out here and start doing a show. Plus with all the breakthroughs I was making with my mental health struggles and all that, I was like, I really need to do something creative. And Jay and V are doing this awesome show. And I'm like, I'm just going to hit him up and be like, how do you make your show sound so good? And we just kind of went from there. And you've been on a few times here, and it's been a great time. And every episode we've done has been just a great conversation. And I've gotten good feedback on it. It's just amazing, man. And I kind of took a break for a little while, like a couple months ago, and now I'm kind of getting back in the flow. So I'm like, I want to get this back going. But the show that I listened to earlier today of yours of Frown Town was about the veterans and that bill
Mm-hmm.
that had gone through
Oh yeah,
or
the Honoring Our
gotten.
Pact Act. Yeah,
Yeah,
that
yeah,
unfortunately
and
got diced in the Senate.
right, and that was like something I had been watching recently on the news, and that was the whole like Jon Stewart thing. Was he was speaking out about it in DC and all that, and I
Yeah.
was like, what the hell is Jon Stewart doing? I'm like, first I didn't even recognize him. I'm like,
Oh,
oh,
he's
that's
way
Jon
older
Stewart.
now. Yeah, he's
I'm
so
like,
old
holy
now.
fuck, like,
It's an old dude. Yeah, yeah.
but he's awesome though, and I'm like glad he was there, and I'm glad he's doing that stuff,
He
and I'm
puts
like, and then
forth
when I
a lot of effort for veterans. Like he shows up for them consistently, and I think he's really dedicated the time since he's been
and I
off
didn't I
camera
didn't
to that.
realize that, and
Yeah,
me being a veteran, like I knew there was a reason why I liked him a long time ago, just because he just lays it out there, and he's funny, and just straight shooter, straight with it, just lays it
hmm
out, and I'm like, that's cool. But like this just kind of solidified it, that whole thing of like, okay, I know he's cool now. He's fighting for the me from 10 years ago. The guys that were in and doing stuff, and your show when you were talking about the burning and stuff like that.
yeah.
The funny thing about that was like about 2 or 3 weeks ago, my daughter couldn't come over on movie night.
hmm
Um, so I have my two sons, and they're older than my youngest, my daughter. So I'm like, okay, I think maybe now might be an okay time to kind of show them a movie that's a little different than our normal, like kind of funny comedy or sci-fi fantasy kind of, stuff that I
Yeah,
grew up with in the 70s, 80s, 90s. Um, I wanted to show them something a little deeper, something
yeah.
a
Like
little
some
more
cinema.
tragic.
Yeah.
And what I showed them, funny enough, was the movie Jarhead. And it was
Oh.
and that movie, Jake Gyllenhaal plays a Marine,
hmm
and it shows a pretty good representation of the burning,
Yeah.
the
The burn pits.
burning of the stuff, the burn pits, and the guys that I knew, because when I was in the Marines was obviously after the Gulf War, so I wasn't in Iraq and stuff like that. I
hmm
joined several years after that, in the mid '90s. But the stories I heard from a lot of the guys that were still in when I was first joined, they were like, yeah, it was that bad. And
Yeah.
when I saw Jarhead, I was like, okay, I want to go see this. It's a movie about Marines. I am a Marine. Let's see if they got it right. But even though I wasn't in that situation, thankfully, thank
Yeah.
God that I wasn't having to do that shit. But the boot camp part, I could totally relate with. I was like,
Yeah. Just
holy fuck,
completely
yeah.
resonated.
I was like immediate like flashback, like, oh my God. Like but I wanted to show my kids that movie, and it maybe it been a little too soon. My oldest son's 16. He's autistic, and
hmm
there's it's just a little different. And my younger son is 14, and he is very intelligent and smart, and he gets things, but I don't know, the whole thing with the Gulf War was just very tragic, and a lot of elements and
I don't
and
know.
things. And
I don't know necessarily if that is, and I guess again, I'm not a parent or an expert in any way, but I don't know if necessarily it's a bad thing. I think some of the most impressive things about movies and film are that sometimes they present themes to us that challenge us to think, that challenge us to reason, and in some
yes,
cases,
thank you. Yeah,
you may not get the answer immediately. It's not like you're going to watch the movie and be like, well, I know the moral of that. But I think it gives you an opportunity to understand a perspective that, in all honesty, you may not get the chance to experience. I think, especially if you see, I think Jarhead, and then the other movie that resonates for me is, was it Full Metal Jacket? The boot camp
yeah,
scenes on that. The rest of the movie is meh, but the boot camp scenes, I think, on that, I think some of like the understanding of what happens in a boot camp and how someone who is a soldier, especially like someone who was drafted into it, and how that affected them, and seeing like the what some of them may have undergone and went through, having that like reference point can help you understand them a little bit better. It can help you relate to them a
Yeah.
bit better. You don't have to fully understand the experience to have a bit more empathy for them, knowing that they went through something similar to that. And I think it's difficult to watch in the moment, and it can be very challenging. But I think there's obviously there's ages where you don't need to be, your movies don't need to make you ask questions. Yeah, and I get that. But I think
Yeah. Yeah.
I think there's also
Pure entertainment.
right. And there's not just ages, but there's also times where it's like, look, I don't need to think right now. But I think there's also it's a good idea to, like you said, to kind of introduce your children to movies that are going to confront them with the world that we live in. And I know that there's an overarching drive to try to keep your children as innocent as possible for as long as possible. And I 100% am for that. But there's a difference, I think, between innocence and naivete. And I think you can keep your children innocent by not having them glorify or participate in the glorification of violence and of like horrible, evil things. But you can also make sure they're not naive to the fact that there are bad things in the world, that they understand that choices that they might make can have repercussions and consequences that they may not foresee.
Mm-hmm.
And by helping them see that and understand, like, hey, if you decide to, for instance, grow up to be a soldier, there's nothing quote unquote wrong with this. I did that. But do know that the consequences have long lasting effects. There are things that you will see and experience as a soldier that is part of the sacrifice that you make to go serve your country. And that sacrifice, hopefully, you understand before you make it. I think a lot of times when people sign up for armed service, they don't understand that level of sacrifice. And fortunately, there are movies like Jarhead, and then obviously there are veterans who have the opportunity to share that experience. But I think the thing that really kind of struck me the most about the whole burn pit situation, and then I promise you I'm not going to dwell on this because I know we have other stuff to talk about. But the thing that struck me the most about that, and I said this during the episode, and I was kind of furious about this, is that this wasn't like an enemy attack. This wasn't like they were under fire, and someone was trying to kill them and they suffered long-term consequences from that.
Right.
No, this was literally the long-term consequences of us just not thinking through how to deal with trash and not caring about the land that we were invading. And so because we didn't care about the land and clearly about the people who were around it, the way we decided to get rid of trash, and with MREs and with the way the military is set up to function, things are built into a very individualized package so you can take it and eat it right there for that day, for that time, right then. Things are rationed away, and there's a lot of plastic involved in that, and all of that's just getting burnt to the dirt. And all the munitions that you're burning, instead of like figuring out a way to move them or figuring out a way to like set up a supply chain, or even like, I don't know, since we're so comfortable selling arms to people, sell them to somebody who's an ally. Figure out a way to do something with these other than just like blowing, like just burning them. And then the
Right.
on top of that, all of the damage that happened to veterans who had to deal with this. So this is completely America's fault. Not like we were under attack. It's just we sent them there and then we got them sick. On top of that, to then force them to prove that this very toxic thing they had to do is what caused them their problems, when many of them are in like
exactly.
stage 4, stage 5 cancer, is despicable. And like it's just, that's why Jon Stewart was furious on TV, and honestly, we all should be, because it's
absolutely,
we sent them there to serve, and they went there voluntarily and willingly. The least we can do is, when they need us, is be there for them both voluntarily and willingly, and we are not. And it's sad that it's like that, and it kind of bums me out, because I have family members. I have a brother-in-law who's active right now. I had my grandfather was served. I have uncles who served. Both my grandfathers served, actually. So, like, I mean, it bums me out because I know so many veterans, and I've seen so many veterans who had to undergo the same treatment when they did not drag their feet to go fight for America. And it just makes me sad that America drags its feet to fight for them.
Yeah.
But anyway, sorry, I said I wasn't going to spend a ton of time on that.
No, you're absolutely right, man. And it's and the making that point of that it wasn't a combat related thing, or it wasn't like Vietnam. You have the veterans
Yeah.
now that have like the Agent Orange,
Which again was
issues.
us.
Yeah, and it's like all this crap. It's like they. It seems like a lot of like if it was a company working, if you were a private security person working for a company, and you got caught up in some shit where the company was like burning a bunch of toxic chemicals or whatever, and you
Mm-hmm.
got sick from it, it would be considered like an occupational hazard. Like you work for the company, they know they have to reimburse you or do whatever is
Yeah.
necessary to take care of you for being in that situation while you were on the clock working for them. Like they know it's their responsibility, or should know. Their HR and whoever else should be like, yeah, he was on the clock. He was right there. That whole incident took place, and okay, yeah, we'll cover whatever is happening and whatever comes by in the future. Like,
Mm-hmm.
but you're right. The thing with the armed service members that were in these situations and made to stand out in the desert and like burn shit, literally shit,
Yeah.
like burning
Literally shit.
toxic, fecal matter and stuff and whatever else, like you said, like the MREs and stuff.
Munitions,
Man, I miss
plastic.
MREs kind of.
Really?
I gotta say, like sometimes,
Oh,
like
really?
some of those, but they block you up so bad that you're just
Yeah.
like, fuck it, I don't ever have to go to the bathroom again. Like I could just keep walking another 40, 50 miles, and
Yeah, that's why I never can. And also, like, there are very few of them I think I cared for the taste of. And I know, so I never served, but like I love Army Supply surplus. I love Army surplus stuff for a long time. Like I would just hit like Army surplus stores and it'd be like, oh man, I'm getting duffel bags, I'm getting MREs. And it was just a thing I was into for a bit. And so like I would always grab MREs out of Army surplus just to see like how they like just to see what they were, what they tasted like, and kind of play around with them. And some of them are like
yeah.
I think the process of preparing it makes you like excited for it. So you're like, oh, this is gonna be good. And then once you get it ready, it's not what you thought it was gonna be. It's like, oh, this was only okay.
I have so many stories about MREs. It's ridiculous.
What was
like
your favorite?
The MRE bombs that we would make in the desert, like you take like a tall, one of those tall, like it's almost like a 40-ounce water bottle, plastic water bottle. And then you take the heater element that is in the MRE that's made to like, you just add water and it causes a chemical reaction and starts to heat up your food in the little pouch that it comes in.
Yep.
Well, we would take that pouch and we would roll it up and shove it into a water bottle. And then you fill the water bottle up with shaving cream, like shaving foam, and and then you'd fill that up, and then you'd pour the smallest amount of water into it and seal it shut. And then you find some unsuspecting airman or something that is like, we're Marines, we're on one side of the base, and like the Air Force is on the other, and you can like go down there and like lift up the side of a tent and throw it under like someone's cot and then close it and then run a few tents down and just wait. And you just wait and listen. And they'll be like, holy fuck, what the fuck was that? Like, holy shit, ridiculous stuff. And it's like in the movie Jarhead, they started playing a lot of stupid games because they were like bored. They were like out in the desert for like weeks with nothing to do.
Nothing at all.
So they're like playing football and the news is out there. Like the Gulf War was one of the first wars where we had like almost constant like news coverage of the front, like it hadn't happened like that before. And so it was new to everybody. And so they're just out there filming these guys, and Marines start just acting like a bunch of lunatics and doing crazy shit. But I was in the desert in 98. I was in Egypt, and we got bored because we were doing a practice. I don't know if you've heard of Red Flag. Red Flag is a thing that takes place between all armed services out near Las Vegas, Nevada, and it's an air wing specific practice. It's a joint service aviation exercise, basically.
Mm-hmm.
And so they have another one that was called Bright Star, and it was a joint service thing that took place in Egypt, of all places. And I was there for that in '98,
Mm-hmm.
and it. If your planes aren't flying, I was working on C-130s at the time, but if your planes aren't flying, or if they are flying and they're gone on like another away mission or something like that, like you are literally sitting around
Yeah,
doing
you have
nothing,
nothing to do. Yeah,
waiting, and you're going to like the
it's
big
a
giant tent chow hall and seeing all the different forces like Navy and Air Force
it's a
and
weird
all
wait
that.
too, because it's not. I don't think you can fully relax because you are theoretically in on a base in the middle of active combat. So you're not like just like super relaxed. You're still kind of a little bit tense, but then you just have nothing to do. And there's not,
Yeah.
because the base is so temporary, there isn't anything really set up to give you something to do. Occasionally, I think you get lucky and they put up a basketball goal and like maybe you can play around on that, or like, they give you a football, you can play that. But even then, you have to have guys to do that. So it's just,
Yeah.
if it's just you or you and another person, how much fun is it just to throw a football back and forth? How long can you do that before it's just like, well, this
And
is just
I'm not
as
even like a
boring?
sports fan, and I don't even ever play any kind of sports,
Yeah,
but we were out in the middle of our flight line, like throwing a football, and
just for something to do. Yeah, that's why
yeah.
cards ends
And
up happening and gambling and all that other stuff, because it's just like, yo, let's just play cards. Let's do anything because time needs to go by way faster.
there was a tent that had like a projector and like a screen, so you could go there and they had like a VHS player, and you'd like the MWR would like give you videotapes of like movies and stuff, and you could just sit there and play a movie, and it was like the same old movies from like early '90s, and like it was like,
Yeah.
oh my god, they had board games and things, and I'm like, fuck this, and they had like 3 desktop computers with the huge CRT monitors, and those were set up so that you could basically wait in line and sit down and email people back home if you wanted to.
Oh
And it was
wow.
like, it was crazy. The internet wasn't as crazy as it is now. It was just like, but I was fortunate. I felt like, wow, I get to like actually talk to my
Yeah.
friends and stuff, back home and tell them what's going on and whatever. But
Yeah. I
the
mean,
thing about that whole thing and about showing my kids Jarhead and letting them have that little bit of a taste of like the reality of things that are out there in the world. A lot of that kind of built up to what I was presenting to you a couple weeks ago about this podcast and about the topic of violence in our world, and how even when there's like during wartime or even like in state or I don't know how to put it, but there's the the thing that kind of drew this out and made me like, I really want to do a podcast about this. So let me just tell a quick story. Besides the MRE bomb thing, because that you brought that on, man. That was like,
that was me. You're right.
okay. So I was reminded by someone recently in a Discord server discussion we were having one day, that these modern times are like the least violent in history, and it got me thinking that with all the recent, not so recent, like gun violence in the U.S. and all these other things going on, I was just reminded that the conversation. I was watching one of my favorite shows. It's called Through the Wormhole, and it has Morgan Freeman. One of the episodes I was watching not too long ago, just it just like implanted this thought in my head. Was like, okay, I need to do more research about this. I need to do a podcast episode. Um, the episode was about violence, and it was about the inherent like evil that there is in the world, and
Mm-hmm.
It really reminded me that about the conversation I had in Discord, was that yeah, we kind of are living in maybe the least violent of times in history, depending on how you look at it. The on that show, they discussed that exact topic. And one of the scientists made the note that the reason we're less violent as a species, as humans, is that our brains have evolved and we are, in general, a lot smarter as humans than we were hundreds of years ago. Our brains are more intellectual due to the massive amounts of learning and stimulation that is much more readily available, literally at our fingertips, like smartphones and stuff. We can look up just about anything these days, any statistics, facts, history, quotes from past historical figures, and even the data that has been recorded via scientific papers or even old newspaper articles from almost 100 years ago that have been archived and such and made accessible on the internet. So what's the point of discussing this?
I have so many notes about what was just said. So many notes.
Okay.
So I want you to finish the point, and then I just want to say let's not leave that quote behind. I want to return to that. I have notes, but okay, please continue.
Okay. So I was thinking, what is the point of discussing this? To maybe point out that even though we are, as a people, are advancing and evolving, we are still capable of violent and evil acts. It's still in us, but maybe we have more control over it. Maybe it's pressure from society to not look bad. Who knows? But I had an aha moment, one of those aha moments the other day. And I'm going to share this at the end of this, the aha moment. Some of the facts to show how violent trends have gone down. I looked up some of the stats and charts that show that the amount of deaths during conflicts or wars have been greatly reduced. If we look at a chart from the War and Peace website, we can see the total number of deaths have been really reduced between 1946 and 2020. There have been some spikes on the graphs shown there, but overall the trend shows that it's rapidly reduced. They also show the difference between state-based conflicts and one-sided violence. And I'll have to check those charts later to point those out. But so there's other aspects. That was the main thing that was drawing me. It was like, there's all these facts and trends, and you and I talked earlier before starting this episode, and you brought up some good points too. The aha moment, I don't know if I should save it for the end because I think it kind of makes sense.
I would like to talk about it. I think it'd be fun.
Yeah, the aha moment. Okay, so I was thinking last night, why did I want to talk about this other than to point out the downtrend of violence overall? Because that is one point, but to deepen the discussion, here's what I came up with. Maybe now that our brains have grown, access to information is easier, and we gain knowledge much more quickly than before, even though violence overall is lower and we are living in a relatively more peaceful or less violent times, maybe the effects of our subconscious and our innate abilities towards evil in general is more suppressed. Maybe this is what ties everything together with the modern day mental health epidemic and crisis. Also, video games and movies, like we discussed earlier, violence sells, so maybe we're controlling it more. Maybe we're just being able to, like if you have anger issues, they say to get them out. It's that built up energy within you. And if you expel it in a more healthy way, like, are people doing that? Okay. Are we going to the gym and just working out a lot, and getting the anger out instead of like going out and committing acts of violence? But that's domestic stuff, not wartime. But I'm talking overall as humans.
This is why I want to go back and talk about that quote, because I wanted to spend some time really diving into that concept that human beings have evolved, that from the time period that we were in, where there was more violence, to now we have somehow moved forward and evolved. So my first question to you is, have human beings really evolved? And what I want to really focus on here is has our, like, if anything, our lifespan has gotten longer. I think we can take that, right? So that would be the thing that, if you look at humans physically, that has changed the most significantly, that might have an impact on this conversation. I don't think we've had a real change in capacity as far as our actual brain power. We haven't really had a change where, like, we can say definitively that we are quote unquote smarter. I think we can definitely pass more IQ tests now, but I mean, again, that's not necessarily smarter. It's just we made all our IQ tests in this era. So if you go back to another era, then they're not going to pass an IQ test. So I feel like,
Right. Okay.
so I feel like the lifespan is where because we live longer, we have a greater capacity, I think, to accomplish specific things. And one of the things I think that we have accomplished primarily here in the world that gets missed is, and I also want to say this: I don't think that humans are inherently violent. I think we have the capability for it. I don't think we are inherently violent. I think violence is something that, and I want to make sure I say this correctly. I think the use of violence in societal context is learned. I don't think violence is learned, because, like, we're primal. I have arms and muscles. I can learn as a baby. You see a baby knock over blocks. That is violence. That is a form of violence. When you see a baby knock over blocks, like, blah, that's a form of violence. So we have the capacity for that and the capability. I think what we're talking about is the use of violence in a societal context. So when I am trying to solve a problem societally that involves another human being, I turn to violence. I think that's what we're really kind of dancing around here is the use of violence in a societal context. I think that's learned. I don't think, because all society is learned. It's all things that we taught ourselves. We all made it up. Our parents taught us, whether consciously or subconsciously. We saw how they dealt with the world, and then we were like, well, I guess that's how you deal with the world. So if, for example, something that's been proven by psychologists is like a cycle of abuse, especially with physical abuse, where if children are abused physically by their parents, when they grow up, they're more likely to physically abuse their children. And so it's cyclical, because it's learned. It's the use of violence in a societal context is learned. So if that's the case, if it is learned and we're not inherently violent, then the evolutionary aspects of it don't really come to play here, because we're not inherently violent. We just learn to be more violent. We haven't truly evolved more that we can measure. I mean, maybe we have. Our understanding of the world has definitely changed, and what, I guess, in understanding how the world works. But, like, that's also a weird thing, because if you had talked to someone in, like, the 15th century about science and their understanding of the world, they would 100% tell you, well, our understanding of the world is better than it ever has been. And we understand, and we know how things work. And we understand now that we didn't quite understand things in the 15th century. And in maybe the 24th century, if we're still here, knock on wood, we may not understand things this way either. We're still kind of expanding and learning and growing in our knowledge of the world. So I think then the question is, when we look at
the universe doesn't revolve around the Earth, like we are just part of the universe, and we're revolving in a solar system around a star, and everything has changed. But you can't go back in time and tell those people that they're totally fucked up and wrong. They were, but they knew what they knew, and they knew more than they did 10, 20, or 100 years before them.
Exactly. And so, like, and in all those cases, like, it's so you kind of can't rely upon, like, intellect and knowledge, because we don't really know what we don't know. And we don't really know how advanced we feel that our knowledge of the world is very advanced because of what we're able to do. But we don't, by the flip side of that, what we're able to do seems light years in an advancement above someone from the 15th century. And what they were capable of doing, if you jump back to the 8th century, is, again, super. And that's just how time works and how our world has developed. So then the question I would ask is, if we look at violent acts, what motivates them? Typically, it's, again, we're talking about the use of violence in a societal context. So in a societal context, we use society to survive in the world, where it's easier for us to do that do that societally than it is individually. By yourself, you have to get your own house, get your own food, get your own water,
Yeah.
protect yourself at all times. When you go to sleep, sleep with one eye open because, predators are out. You have to do all that yourself. With a society, you have someone there to help you so that you're not doing all of the procurement, all of the work yourself. You can do a role, play a job, get a job, play a role in that society, and then function with a level of security that you would not have individually.
Yeah.
And I think what has happened is that when you look further back into the past, societally, there has been far more insecurity and instability at other points within our world than there has been now. And there's definitely been far less prosperity and far more reasons for people, again, to societally use violence as an answer to a problem. So if I'm starving and you have food and I don't have money to give you for food, but I have a knife, I'm going to eat. If and and when we think about violent crimes and we think about violence, a lot of times, obviously, it's learned. But if you look at the way that our world has introduced certain forms of oppression into it, we can see where that violence was learned from. There are certain specific forms of oppression that have been introduced into our world. There have been certain specific things that, because of our desire to continue to, have the good things that society has given us, that we've built specific cruel systems to propagate society at our own or at a very few hands, at a very few hands benefit. And I think what ends up happening is that those systems which are oppressive, that are a form of violence in of themselves, and then just also the fact that there inequality exists and that lack of thereof, especially when it comes to survival, I think those factors come into play when it comes to how violent we are. And over time, especially now, there's more prosperity, there's more accessibility to food and things that you need to survive. Obviously, we're still not doing a great job of making sure everyone has, but we're at a point where we're arguing about, people who don't have homes, not like, where are we going to get food from? How are we going to say we're past a lot of those more substantial questions about prosperity and survival. And I think because we're past that, we're less violent. Will there always be violence? Yes, because again, violence is learned, and it's like Pandora's box. I don't think we're ever going to be able to put it back in. There's always going to be, and especially while we have wars and governments and large societies. But I truly think that it's the overarching spread of prosperity that, and it's been proven in many cases that if you wanted to end crime, for example, typically prosperity, putting more money into an area drops crime levels. And I think it's just there's programs, jobs, being able to give people, because most of us, in all honesty, I don't think most of us are inherently violent. It's learned, we're taught it, but even like violence can be taught, I think peace can also be learned and taught. And I think given the opportunity to pursue a peaceful life, the majority of people will take it, even if they have learned violence. I think obviously there's a minority that will always kind of skew towards what they have learned because it is comfortable. And as we move forward in time, hopefully we get to a point where fewer and few people learn violence. But I mean, we always have the capability for it. And I think it's always going to kind of exist. But I think that's why we've seen it trending down. It's just that we've managed to spread prosperity to more and more of people. In this country, particularly because that's where a lot of these stats are coming from. But in other countries as well, as prosperity has spread, so too the drop of violence has occurred.
Yeah, man, I totally agree. It's very interesting. Yeah, to look at so many different points, especially what you were just saying. I think. I mean, first of all, I think you're right. I think that it is definitely a learned thing, and as we progress in the future, where especially starting with the home, starting with parents and children, um, discussing things and being more open, and you know, my kids, I wish I could say didn't have to witness violence, and it's sad. And I look at it and I'm like, man, I'm so glad that I'm at a point now that I feel like I'm progressing, that I'm learning. But you hit the nail on the head with the thing that it's learned, because I was abused as a child, and that it just sticks with you.
Yeah.
And when there's things that are difficult to deal with when you're an adult after being an abused child, like it's very difficult to just stay calm and handle things as, a reasonable person should, like when the shit hits the fan, especially being, like I'm a former Marine, like you want to get on top of the situation. You want to survive. You
Yeah.
want to like do whatever you can to survive and take out your enemy. And that's the thing. You get so jaded. You're like, who is your enemy? Like, people at home can appear to
Be
not
an
be on your
enemy.
side. And
Yeah.
and it's like, and it's very sad that, the amount of, I'm glad that there's a lot of these breakthroughs going through with for service members with PTSD and things like that, like with the I've talked about in other episodes, like the psychedelic therapy, assisted therapy and stuff like that. Using MDMA is now in phase 3 trials. It's almost completely legalized, and they're doing training with therapists all over the nation to be able to provide these services to service members who have like flashbacks and nightmares and all this stuff, like, and it's trauma, like in dealing with trauma. And I think once we've got a handle on trauma in general, like for society,
Hmm.
we will see a huge shift in
Oh yeah.
violent acts. Like, and it's just, and it is, like you said, it's a learned thing. And as we progress and get further down in the years, like as people learn and as society and everybody start to get together, it's uh I think the thing is like the once there's less violence at home starting out, there's going to be, through attrition, like, how do we handle this matter? Something I don't like is happening,
Yeah.
how do we take care of this?
And I
And
think
mental health is an overall topic that, I mean, that springs to mind when it comes to all this stuff. Everything I've discussed in the past, and this especially, violence is a trigger, and it's like
and we
because of mental health.
never talk about it. I think that, and like it falls, if we talk about it, it falls on the parents. And I'm not trying to remove parents from parenting, but you never see discussions or even just like books that a parent can take to read with their child, to talk to them about, how do I deal with things when things are bad? Like, what do I do? How do I respond to things not going my way? How do I respond to evil in the world? How do I respond to pressure, stress? We
Yeah.
don't talk about that. And I think the only time I can even remember it being brought up in like the context of like a school was when I was like freaking out and fighting and causing problems. And then they finally sent me to like a counselor, and they were like, well, and then finally the school counselor like walked me through like the problem I was having. And we actually spent time like going through therapy at like a very young age to try to figure out what was going on with me. But those resources aren't readily available, and you have to be a problem before they show up. They really should
Yeah.
have those resources kind of available for everyone. We all could benefit at a young age at going through a therapy sessions, talking about how to deal with emotions that we're starting to experience that we don't know how to deal with, because the expectation is that our parents are going to be able to kind of walk us through that. And for some of us, our parents were. But for a lot of us, our parents themselves were not strong at doing it. And even if your parents are
Nope.
fantastic, they have weak areas and weaknesses that I think someone who is a trained licensed therapist who deals primarily with children could help address. But because we are so reticent to acknowledge mental health disease. We're so reticent to acknowledge that mental health in general and well-being is important, because we're so reticent to acknowledge that. What ends up happening is we kind of push it under the rug until it becomes a screaming, flaming fire that we have to address. And for many of us, that doesn't happen until we're well into adulthood, when we have to spend a lot of time and effort going back and undoing some of the damage that was done to us.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. And you're right on, you're right there at the point, and it it solidifies this whole conversation. What you just said is exactly why I wanted to have this discussion with someone like you, because you're great at verbalizing these things that I'm thinking. I'm like, how do I say this? I'm like, Jay will know. He's got it. He knows where I'm at, and that was perfect, man. Like I mean, access to information, sure. Like of people today nowadays, like the whole less violent thing. Are we smarter? I don't know. Like, I mean, it's just a progression thing. We learn from our mistakes, and we move on. This podcast is why, I mean, I started it because of mental health, because of all the things that I've been through, and PTSD and all the other crap. It's like I wanted to talk about this stuff to get it out there. And you're exactly right. Like I was just thinking, we went camping last week, and I was like, and I didn't do this. And now I think back and I'm like, I should have done this, because I had a blow up episode while we were camping, while we were camping, and I felt bad about it. So I apologized to the kids the next day and stuff. But before I even went, I was like, I did some research on mindfulness for kids, meditation for children, getting them into connecting things and their emotions and what they're feeling, and associating all of that with being aware of their environment, being aware of their body, how they feel, what they're feeling, and all that stuff. And I wanted to kind of go through a little practice with them while we were down there, and I didn't do it, and I regret that now. But I'm thinking, yeah, I there's time to do that, and I'm going to do that soon, because like you just said, if the schools and other parts of society aren't doing that, it does fall back on the parents. If the parents are not, it's one thing to subject kids to a nightmare living hell at home, and being poor and being whatever, and like having relationship problems, or having, difficulty just discussing normal things every day, because there's a parent that gets triggered easily, like it's so widespread, it's not just me, it's not just, a few people in my neighborhood, it's across the country, and it's
all of us.
There's all these people that are dealing with issues. And it's like, if we just kind of get a jump on it and say, why don't we just sit everybody down for a few minutes once a week and talk about our feelings, talk about what could make us feel better, what would make things in life easier for all of us, and get everybody's opinion. But you have to really listen. And that's the problem, is like, I know that I haven't listened to people in the past. Like people talk to me, and it's like, you ask me 5 minutes later, what did they say? And I'm like, fuck, I don't know. Like, I mean, I was listening, I was hearing the words, but like in my mind, had so much going on. It was all jumbled up. And it's like, how do I make heads or tails out of anything? And it was amazing to me to finally start to have discussions again with people after microdosing psychedelics and doing meditation and implementing better diet and things like that into my life. Like before that, I was like being an alcoholic and drinking, a case of beer every night. Like you're pushing everything away. You're just like locking yourself in this little shell, and you're like, I don't want to listen. I don't want to get better, but you have to want to get better. You have to change your own mind in a way. No matter what people say to you, you're not going to change. You're not going to evolve or be a better person or whatever, unless you really want it. And it has to be your own personal decision. And I think that in the grand scheme of things, with the topic of this podcast, with violence and things, I think there's a lot of people out there that do need help. You know,
Mm-hmm.
that need to be shown that they're worthy of love, that they're worthy of understanding, and given a chance to see that they can change too.
Yeah.
They just have to realize they have to work themselves too. They have to do
Yeah.
the work.
Agreed. I think there. To be fair, I think there are also a lot of people who themselves may not even realize that there is work to be done. Like there are so many things. I think, like I would tell everyone to go to therapy if they absolutely positively can't afford to do it. To go, because even if you think that you're like, oh, I'm okay, I feel fine, I'm not sad, I'm not blah. There are so many things I think that I discovered within myself about myself, things that initially though I didn't quote unquote feel sad or I felt fine. There were things, thought processes, ways that I was approaching my life that were harmful inherently, that while at the time I may have felt fine, were kind of dragging me through cycles of like depression and sadness. And then I'd be fine, be like, I'm happy. And then I'd be back down into depression. And because I never had anyone just sit down with training and licensed therapists outside. Well, I did at other points, but because I truly hadn't sat down with someone and just really dug into how I feel, why I believe the way I believe, who I am at my core, what I want to be at my core, who I really am, because I haven't really sat down and dug through that with someone else to help guide me through it. Because doing it by yourself oftentimes can kind of leave you with a false impression of what you are. But because I didn't have someone there to kind of hold up a mirror and walk me through it, there were things that I still kind of kept internally that I never would have found without the help. And so I think there are truly, I think even when we talk about violence, we often don't reflect upon the cause, or I guess in this case, we're talking about the use of violence, but we don't really reflect on, the root causes that brought us there. I mean, it's easy to try to attribute it to one thing, but the truth of the matter is that it's often multiple things, and it requires us to kind of address multiple things. But I think it's great that you're taking time to like kind of introduce your children to the idea of meditation, and even if they aren't into it, and just be like, hey, even if you're not into it, just know that there are other ways that you can find a release. If you're stressed, if you just need to center yourself, if you just need to kind of like bring it in and you can feel like things are getting out of control, there are other ways to find, a feeling of control, or to get things back under a point where they feel like they're under your hands. And I mean, I think it's good to kind of introduce that concept of them looking for, even at a young age, finding ways to kind of calm themselves down, to kind of deal with the world. Because, again, we don't get that training at a young age. You just kind of get tossed into the world and then, figure it out, which is not a good way to do it.
Right. It's like the generational thing, like I see all these memes about Gen X, Generation X is like latchkey kids, like you only saw your parents maybe like once a month, like because they work every day, and you are, you basically live in like, a basement or like another room in the house where you never have to cross paths, and, just all this stuff. And, I look at those things and I'm like, man, that is like, so so relatable, because it was like, I barely talked to my parents unless I just wanted to, like my parents like didn't have to, I mean, every once in a while, like I remember being really little and like my mom telling me, get dressed, we're going to church, and I'm like, oh my God, like what happened? What did I do? Like, I don't want to go to church. I'm like, Dad doesn't have to go to church. He's still in bed. Why do I gotta go? Because Mom wants you to go. Like,
good old
and
week.
I'm like,
why are you doing this to me?
Like, holy shit. And it was out of nowhere because I hadn't been to church in like probably, 2 or 3 months, but it was just all of a sudden, but there was just those weird things. And it was like interactions with parents. And I try to think about those things all the time. My interactions, my personal feelings and emotions when I was dealing with my parents growing up, and what my kids now are dealing with. What do they hear when I talk to them about some facts or stories, or even just whatever random shit? I'm like, how do they hear it and perceive it? I just always question. I'm like, what are they thinking when I'm just sitting here like rambling on about something I did in the military 20 years ago, or whatever. And and then I think, what was my dad thinking that I was thinking when he was telling me stories of what he did when he was in the Navy, you know, 30 years before I was born, like weird shit like that. Like, I don't think we think about that kind of stuff. Like, it's just,
Yeah.
you're just in the moment and you're like sitting there with your kid, and it becomes so normalized that, okay, I'm just here and I got this little human next to me and I'm going to tell him some story about an experience I had, but I want something deeper than that, and I try to reach my kids. And we just had we had movie night last night, and we watched the new Predator movie, Prey,
Mhm.
which was really good.
Oh, nice.
But my son was acting up towards the end of it, or towards the beginning, and then at the end he was just like had a weird attitude and was laughing. And we were having a serious discussion right after the movie about indigenous people and the horrific massacres that took place and things like that. And he was sitting there cracking up laughing because of a joke he thought of from a meme he saw like weeks ago, just because it related to like dead children or something like that. And we were like, what the fuck is wrong with you, dude? Like, don't do that. Be aware of
Yeah.
the situation. We're not, and it kind of set me off in a way, because I was like, what are you doing? Like, why are you being like that? And he was like, why are you so offended? Why are you offended by everything? And I was like, holy shit, like, this is not what I was expecting the conversations to be like when we were just like going to have movie night, movie
Yeah.
night, hang out, watch a movie.
I think it's something that happens a lot of times when you're younger, though, where I remember being young and wanting to be like cool and edgy, and it's like
Mm.
a rush to try to prove how almost like you feel like you're more adult if you're not offended by things. So you remember how you used to curse when you were a kid, like middle school cursing, where it's just like "fuck you, motherfucker," you don't, and it's just every other word is just curse word, curse word, curse word, curse word. And as you get older, you kind of come to the understanding that like people don't talk like that. Like, it's not
Right.
like it's not even. It's really not even about like us being offended. It's just like actual people every day aren't like "fuck you, motherfucker," "you motherfucking bitch." Like, this is not who we are. We use other words because we have bigger vocabularies and we say other things, and occasionally we'll pepper in some cursing. And I think the difference between that is just like your knowledge and experience of the world. And I think that happens a lot of times when you're young and you're trying to deal with something that one probably makes you uncomfortable, because now you're seeing like your parents talk about something with some reverential respect, and it's like, well, everyone's getting all serious. I just want to have fun. And so it puts you in a place where
Yeah.
you're just like, I don't know what to do. And you don't have a lot of experience in how to just, in all honesty, I hate to say this, but I will say when I was younger, I learned something, and then I got older and I became a better person. But when I was younger, I found out if I'm just quiet for X amount of minutes, this will all go away, and then I don't have to think about it anymore. And I used to do that, and I mean, it's a messed up thing. I got older and I realized that I should think about it, and I got better about. But I remember being young. I remember somewhere around like 15, I was like, you know what? Just be quiet, nod, and then they'll be like, all right, and then we'll go back to doing the thing that was fun. And then occasionally there'll be a pop quiz like later, and you can be like, I don't remember, and then you just nod again as they tell you again. And I mean, like it's just. I think though the key though is that when you're younger, you just don't have the context and the experience, and over time you get it, and you meet other people, you get more perspective, and it's great that you're trying to share that perspective with them. I think you can't hold them too far accountable. I mean, there's some accountability obviously, but you can't be like, oh no, I'm
Right.
raising a monster. It's like, no, you just have a teenager.
Exactly. Yeah. I do see that, and my wife reminds me of that too. And you're absolutely right. It is a thing. And I remember I was at that age, and I was doing the same stuff. And
Yeah.
I was man, when I first discovered sarcasm, oh my god, like it was
I was
terrible. Like I
I
was
could not
such
be
an
stopped.
asshole,
Yeah.
man. Like I look back and I'm like,
To the
oh
people
my
who love me
god.
most, to the people who love me most, people who are like, we want nothing but for you to be happy and fed and taken care of, and I'm just being a dick all over, just from the moment I wake up to the moment I go to bed, just me being a dick. And every opportunity I had, I'm just like, let me jump in here and be mean to you. And I don't know how my
Yeah.
parents took it. I'm surprised they weren't just like, look, if the next sarcastic thing you say, we're just going to kick you out. We can't do this anymore.
Oh man. Hey, this is a good place for a break. Let's
Okay.
take a quick break, and we'll come back and we'll wrap this up. And yeah, I got a few closing things, and we can, yeah, we'll just wrap that up, and we'll be good.
All right, cool.
Hey, everybody. Welcome back to the Wormhole Manifest. We took a little break there after our first segment of this episode. Wow, we were getting pretty deep there for a while.
Yeah.
That was good stuff, man. Like we were going, and I think towards the end of that first segment, I was getting a little deep in the stuff. I don't know how to even say it. It was just like
heady. Yeah.
yeah, I was just opening up about things, and that's what I think is good. You know, I think we need to do that with each other, and we need to be open and honest and discuss things. But that's what I want this show to be about. Wormhole Manifest, you know, like get people on the manifest to travel with me through the wormhole, and we like come out into some thick shit, man, and like hopefully we can discuss it and work it out, and you know, come to like some cool entertainment, you know, entertaining, you know, factual and educational and fun stuff, you know. And learning can be really fun, and other times it can be difficult. And to truly evolve in our own selves and in our own places in our society and everyday communities and things, you know, sometimes it takes some tough situations. You know, the thing about psychedelics, you know, like I like to talk about, is that there's no such thing as a bad trip. You know, there's just difficult ones. And the difficult ones is where they stick with you the longest and you learn the most. You know, like you process that for years to come, and you always think back and you're like, man, the things that I was taught that night really come out, and I reflect on it all the time. And it's amazing, man. Like I'm glad these things are coming out to be more mainstream, and you know, hopefully it just doesn't make a bunch of rich white people more richer, you know, like,
well, it's going to do that. It's going to do that, but hopefully that's the only thing it does. You know, there's something that you said that it kind of resonated for me there. So when I was in college the second time, I had a professor who insisted, it was like one of my first communications classes. She insisted that we read this book. It was called Crucial Conversations. Excuse me. And it was about how you communicate in moments when conversations are quote unquote crucial. So when things are tough. And it really was focusing on avoiding like kind of really similar, avoiding tactics that people take when they're uncomfortable and they don't want to talk about things. So things like sometimes when we don't want to talk about, we dismiss it, we deflect. And it was just kind of highlighting all the different ways. Sometimes we're aggressive because we try to force other people into submission. And so it just highlighted all the different ways that when we get into conversations that we're uncomfortable with, things that other people do and things that we can spot in ourselves, and identifying
Mm.
those things and then being able to push past them to be able to have those conversations. Because the most important thing I think about communication is that the conversations that are difficult for us, that are tough, are typically the conversations that we need to have. Those are the ones that we
Mm.
need to spend more time talking about. When we're uncomfortable, typically when we look at our society and the things we don't want to talk about, surrounding race, surrounding identity, surrounding just economics and how we view the world, those conversations make us very uncomfortable. Even just talking about money makes us really uncomfortable. And
Yeah.
we need to be able to have those conversations because all of those things have direct impact not only on our lives, but also on the lives of others. And like we talked about, society exists because as an individual, we can't make it alone. And if our society is crushing specific people and lifting up other people, that's unsustainable because after a certain point, there's nothing left to give. You can only crush so many grapes before, or crush grapes so many times before you don't have any more juice left. And so if you're juicing all the lower class, eventually juice is out. And then where do you go? There's nowhere
Yeah.
left for you to juice. Maybe you make more lower class, but eventually you're just grinding yourself away. So it doesn't make sense for us as a society to rip apart the lower parts of society. The more equality we have, the better we tend to be. We have less crime. We are happier. We have more advancements. Even when we talk about equality from the standpoint of just, other, companies that have a monopoly being broken apart and then us being allowed to actually explore and innovate within certain industries, all of that happens primarily because instead of hoarding things and keeping it individually and singular, we actually value society and we allow society to lean into its best benefits, which is innovation. And the fact that I think we talked about this off air, the fact that most of us, like even if I'm drinking a LaCroix right now, I could not produce a LaCroix on my own. There's no way if you drop me into you could give me all the supplies for it. You could probably give me instructions. Like you could give me a Lego kit for LaCroix. Just a Lego kit for LaCroix. All the supplies and instructions, everything's here. All I gotta do is just follow the instructions and assemble. And I guarantee you this LaCroix will be terrible. I will hurt myself or kill somebody in the process because it is very difficult to make. But our society has made it so that it's actually very easy for me to get. It's like $1.
Yeah.
It's like $1 a drink, and $1 in my world is not that much work. So society has given us the opportunity to actually have things that are extremely complex and very difficult to procure, like that, almost in an instant, with very little effort on our part, individually.
Right.
And I think the key here is that we kind of have to remember that that it's the collective working together that allows that, not our own individual greatness that has brought us there.
Mm. Yeah.
This LaCroix is really good.
Rachel started drinking that recently. Like I've started getting it at that Aldi place that I was telling you about, where they like scrutinize what I'm like shopping, like putting it into another cart. While I'm like, okay, we get her some of that, and
you got to
she
get
likes
on it,
it.
man.
She likes the
so
lemon
good.
lime one, I think.
Lemon
But,
lime is solid. I like so my favorite flavors. Limoncello is really good. It's like the limoncello liqueur. So it's the flavor of limoncello, but like LaCroix. There's no alcohol in it. It's so good. I also love. There's a guava. It's a Sao Paulo guava, so it's like a Brazilian guava that they have. That's like,
man, you got all like the fancy flavors up there. I think we just got like lemon lime and I think strawberry or something. I don't know.
My favorite flavor then is going to make you upset. It's cherry blossoms. It's literally not cherry. It's cherry blossoms, and you can taste the blossom. It's like, oh man, this tastes like a cherry blossom smells. It's really good. Yeah, it's so good. I drink a lot of LaCroix. I drink a lot of it.
Oh man, that's crazy. Shit, where was I? There was something I was just thinking about, and I didn't want to lose it. And I was like, okay, remember that. Okay, okay, in the last segment we were talking about some stuff. I don't want to dig back too deep into that, but like something that is on a side note of the violent thing. Big Pharma has uh, several thousands, maybe millions of people kind of reliant on them for their daily Prozac or Xanax or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
If they fall, if for some reason all these millions of people can't get their Prozac or Xanax, what is that going to do? Like, is that going to spike the violent things and the tendencies in humanity all of a sudden? Like if it's something that's just all of a sudden, even like a natural disaster or something, and it's like
Are
production
you thinking more
lines and
like a supply chain
shipments,
disruption?
supply chain, yeah, all that.
Yeah.
Like, are people going to like start to, people that have suffered trauma or people who have mental health issues that are dealing with them like I was in the past, where I was reliant on my medications as this kind of crutch to get me through the day. And I wasn't aware, and I wasn't facing my issues, and I wasn't doing the work that I think I need to do to get better, even though and I was reminded of this by my therapist or my doctor a week or so ago, that I do have diagnosis. So it's like,
Mm-hmm.
my diagnosis says that, I can be on medications. I choose not to be. I'm on like one medication now, but it's very low dose. But I've gotten off of like 6 or 7 other medications because of you know, it wasn't helping me at the time. So I'm wondering what that will affect our, not just our nation, but the world, or pretty much just our nation, because we're
Yeah.
so reliant on big pharma. And I know a lot of other countries are too, but they have other means to, they have like, other countries have universal health care and things like that. And, it's all kind of worked into the system. But if the shit hit the fan and there was no
That,
more,
that feels like a two-part question. And so
yeah, it's,
the first part I'm gonna say, but then I feel like we have to come back to it because it's like a weird overarching thing that I don't want to go down a rabbit hole with. But the first thing is what happened that took down only pharma, like only pharma. So like because think about the government that we're in 2008, the auto industry by itself in America was like, we're going down. And the government was like, no, you're not. And they grabbed them and they gave them a whole bunch of money and they pulled them back out. And I would imagine that the thought process you're having is one that the government has had as well at some point. And I'm pretty sure if pharma started going down economically, the government would come in and be like, hey, here you go. We'll bail you out. So, because the government doesn't have an infinite supply of money, but I mean, it might as well. Um,
printers, they just print it and keep printing.
not even from that context. It's just the government, the United States government can just borrow because people will give it money knowing that it's the best example I've heard. I think John Oliver may have said it, was that, or maybe it was Adam Conover, but essentially America is like the Lannisters in Game of Thrones. We always pay our debts. And because we're so good at it, people are willing to give us more money all the time because we have never defaulted on a loan. We always pay our debts. And so because of that, it makes me wonder, like for funding for those types of things is not a problem. I guess the biggest question I have is this: when it talks about like, pharma going down, we can always fund it. My bigger overarching question, I guess the answer to that is this. Every day, because of the nature of our healthcare system, we get individual cases that give us a glimpse into the answer to your question. So while there is definitely an abundance of medications available in America, the accessibility to those medications varies based upon, where you are in your station, quote unquote, station in life. So you may or may not be able to afford medication. And then there's also many people who are relying upon government programs that funding often is subject to the whims of the government. So if, one government is that is Democrat and they are more willing to open the purse strings and fund your program, then your program will be well funded and you'll have a great experience. But then very suddenly, Republicans can come into office, and they typically aren't as fiscally liberal, and so then they're cutting programs, and we saw sort of the effects of that. Seattle Counseling Services, which was one of the oldest LGBTQ focused counseling services in Seattle, ended up having to close its doors for a variety of reasons. None of them having to do with governmental change, but in that happening, there were thousands of people who were suddenly left struggling to figure out how they were going to get mental health services, where they could find counseling, where they could find, their medication. And some of them were fortunate enough to be able to, be able to afford medication. Some of them were fortunate enough in some cases to be able to move towards like privatized insurance, or even pick up something like, jump into other insurance, or maybe not insurance, but find other services that were available to them that would be covered by the state. But in all of those cases, that agency going down did give us individual case by case basis where people were left without their medication, where they were left without the services that they need to protect their mental health. So I would agree with you. I think it is something that's terrible. I hopefully, because if it does happen, I'm assuming that the U.S. government's down too, and that's a much bigger issue. It's like, I mean, it's bad, but I mean, like now everyone's down bad, and like
Yeah.
I don't foresee a world where industries as large and as important as big pharma will be allowed to fail, and that in and of itself is kind of a problem. There's never a point where anyone's like, we can't strike from our medications, right? So we can't be like, you know what, you charge too much, we're not going to pay it because we'll die. So we have to pay the thing that you ask us to pay in most cases, or we'll die in most cases. In other cases, it'll just be very unpleasant. But we have to pay the thing that you tell us to pay. And the only person or entity that can stand between us and the pharmacy is the government. As we just talked about, the government is very much invested in keeping big pharma going and will save them if they crash. And because of the way money works, and the fact that our government very much operates and is funded by money, when Big Pharma wants things, Big Pharma kind of gets it because Big Pharma has the money to give to the government to lean its ear towards it. So it's not, I just don't know the world that exists. Like the world that exists where Big Pharma goes down is a much bleaker one. It's not because Big Pharma's gone. It's an apocalyptic world where people are eating each other. And
right.
in the other case of it, I feel like the biggest thing is we can see that happening kind of on a case by case basis, where there are people who are without their medications or without the mental health care services that they need. And I think the bigger problem that we have is that, like you mentioned, there isn't a lack of supply for those things. And there's not a lack of demand. The biggest problem is that right now, currently, money is the biggest current denominator into whether or not you get healthcare, especially mental health care.
Yeah, you've kind of made that. You've made my point. Like the thing was that, obviously, if Big Pharma goes down, there's a shitload of other things that are hitting the fan, and post-apocalyptic world kind of thing. The thing was that it's like, if that happens, if we come to a point where there isn't a Big Pharma, obviously everything else has failed. Like all the checks and balances of our, capitalistic society have, collapsed. And, we've, I don't know if you've seen or read The Time Machine, by H.G. Wells. It's,
Familiar.
In the future, there's the Morlocks, which are like this underground society of people or things or mutants or whatever they call them. But like the thing is that humans exist outside of that realm, and they fear the Morlocks. They're the mutants that are underground, and it's kind of what I'm thinking. It's like there's maybe we're so dependent now on things like Big Pharma, that, remember we were talking about earlier in the first segment, it was like, everything is so accessible, like knowledge is accessible, drugs are accessible. The things that are accessible to get us to lead a less violent lifestyle, or our world or society is less violent, because everything seems to me kind of more controlled. It's more,
Well, you know,
I don't know,
the
like
more I
not
think
really
about
controlled,
this,
but
there's something that you said and the more I think about this, there's one other overarching point I think we should make, because I think it goes back a little bit to what we were talking about previously in the other segment, where we talked about the idea of whether or not mankind has moved forward, whether or not we've progressed. And like, while our understanding of things has moved forward, and our definite understanding of what a person needs as far as mental health has progressed, as well as medications, I think one thing that we are missing is that for centuries, mankind has managed to medicate itself, um, arguably ineffectively in some cases, but has managed to be able to find ways
yeah,
to medicate itself without the inclusion of a commercial system. And when you look at indigenous peoples that are still in existence today, they are still capable of treating many mental health issues and providing mental health services to their own members, or to in the case of indigenous nations, their own members, without the inclusion of big pharma. So I think it's something
right.
that I think it's will it have an impact on our society? 100%. If it does happen, especially if it happens, I guess somehow without the government going down, which oof, that scenario that scenario is terrifying. But
It is.
I think the other thing to remember is that while big pharma again does seem to be kind of the end all to like healthcare issues and services, there were and still exists healthcare remedies, especially in the realm of mental health, that existed, that mankind has used for centuries and will probably continue to use, either in correlation to or even separately from big pharma and westernized medicine. So I don't know. I think even if things did get bad, there are so many indigenous people who understand the planet that the only thing that would concern me would be whether or not there's enough resources for us to then completely go to something that would be more holistic, or more herbal.
Yeah,
Because I mean, there's a lot of people, but
right.
yeah, I think that the option would be there though.
Right. Yeah, yeah, and you're right. That's that's one of the things, and one of the points that I've been discovering recently, or in the past couple of years, is that there are treatments to mental health issues that have existed for thousands of years, that have been in small communities or tribes, or places in like South America, and they they're in places where people are in more close knit communities, like these places that where every person is a valued member of that community. And if someone starts acting weird, or depressive, or anxiety, or whatever it is, may be, even if it's like a substance abuse issue where some uh, members of the community have become alcoholics, or whatever, they've found ways of treating that person through ceremonies, and like these ancient ceremonies and things like that have been around forever, that in these communities that have kind of faded away throughout the existence of our modern, like everyday, fast paced, go to go, like nonstop, uh, you know, office cubicle kind of existence, where we like sit and mindlessly drone away looking at a computer screen in an office building. There's thousands of people across the nation that are doing this, that there's places like in Silicon Valley in California, where they're producing like microchips and software and developing code for computers and all that, that they've found benefits from microdosing psychedelics to their creativity and mindfulness and things like that. So it's like they're almost kind of like they're tapping into these ancient traditions of we are a community. Even though everything's so spread out and we're all online, 24/7, it's like we can still have that element of what people did thousands of years ago, where we're in a close knit society and we're on a community, or we're in a tribe together and we all work together. And that's what it kind of pinged me earlier when you said, like earlier, that we we can't do anything alone. Like if you send us back in time, even if we have all the instructions and uh, all of the materials that we need to construct something scientific, uh, you know, 500 years ago or something, it's like we individual person can't really do it. Like we need that. We need others around us that we
Yeah.
can work together with and unite and put these things together and make a good use for it.
I
And
mean,
and that's how we have grown. That's
yeah.
how we've advanced to where we are now, because we've worked together with people, not just people within our own country, but people throughout the world. I mean, Albert Einstein wasn't an American. Like Albert Hoffman, who invented LSD, was not an American. Like
Yeah.
there are these scientists. There's these smart people all over the world that are sharing that knowledge, and that is where we benefit, is by the shared knowledge of individuals that discover things and teach us how to use them. And if we go to ancient civilizations or cultures or tribes in South America, they will show you ways of meditation and practices using plant medicine and things like that that can help you relieve pain, or whatever else. And it's just
Yeah. Which is
there's so much out there,
which is
so
why I
much.
think if big pharma were to go down, I think there we would maybe turn back to something a little bit more. I don't want to say natural, because that's kind of a weird connotation, but we turn back to things that existed before it. And like I said, I think we would still have some of the same understanding of the human mind that we have now and of mental health, but maybe we figure out new ways to incorporate the more holistic aspects of mental health care from previous times in more modern and innovative ways. I think the thing
Yeah,
that should always be noted is that anytime there is a monopoly or a stopgap where all roads run through one thing, removing that thing doesn't necessarily mean that we are all screwed. The example I'll give, I think it was something that was actually on a John Oliver episode recently, was AT&T. For a long time, AT&T was the only telephone company in the world, and every time people talked about breaking up AT&T, it's like, well, where are you going to get your telephone from? You're going to trust some guy from down the street who just set up his own telephone company? We're the only telephone company you've ever used. And what ended up happening is they did break up, and then we started getting better rates and better quality and service and innovations, because AT&T had to compete to keep up. And while I am not 100% on board with the idea of competition in the aspect of economics, I will admit that anytime you have things converging into one point, where now this point controls all access to a specific thing, then you don't have as much innovation, because there's no need for them to innovate. There's no want for it. There really isn't a reason for them to go out of their way to improve mental health care services, because why? I can get you to pay me a lot for very little right now, but with that being removed, when we now have to try to look for ways to innovatively solve problems, just as we have now because of the problems with our healthcare system, I think what you'll see is that, quite frankly, we've been able to not only meet the needs that big pharma often leaves behind, but in some cases, I think we can actually exceed some of those needs and find methods and processes that are better than just simply medicating ourselves.
dead air. Yeah, I'm captivated. Yeah,
um,
that's why I love having you on here, man. Because you like fill my head with stuff, and I'm just like, yeah, Yeah, I see it, man.
No, this is good. I'm actually this is a great conversation. I like that as a question. I think it's a really cool question in general. I think mainly because we are conditioned to think of our world as being very stable, and I think as a whole we should do more thoughts about what will we do when the things that we rely upon and think of as being permanent show themselves not to be. What if
Yes.
suddenly there is no more permanence to institutions that we've come to just trust? And I think having that conversation, having those exercises, does two things. First of all, it helps us understand that the monolith that is America is vulnerable in many cases and can be damaged, can be hurt, can be destroyed. But it also helps us to remember that it's also not the end all. A lot of times we think of ourselves as being the pinnacle of what is happening in the world around us. And the truth of the matter is that while there are some things that we're really good at, there are also some things that other people are really good at, and there are solutions to problems that we have found that work for us, that other people have found other solutions for that are different, that also work. And I think my mom's favorite thing to say when I was younger was that there's more than one way to skin a cat, which is a really messed up thing to do and also say. But I mean, I don't know if that's true. I've never skinned a cat, but I assume since it's a saying that there is more than one way to skin a cat. She could have picked any other animal, by the way. She could have said a raccoon. She could have said a deer. Animals that you skin that should be skinned and are normal for skinning. Very long list. But she went with cat. She decided to pick an animal that you should not skin or kill. That's what she went with. But yeah, it's there's more than one way.
Like a possum or something. Like I don't know.
Animals. You don't even have to try to think of one. Snake. See, didn't even try. Pull one in my head. It's so easy to think of. There are so many animals that you should skin. A cat is not one of them, and that's the one she always went with. She was like, "There's more than one way to skin a cat." And it's always like, "But you shouldn't be skinning cats, Mom. It's not a thing that people smile about. It's actually frowned upon in society."
Was your mom someone who would also say something like a room? Oh, damn it, I can't think of the saying. It was like a southern saying. It was like a room full of cats.
A room
in a rocking chair.
A cat in a room full of rocking chairs is what you're looking for.
Cat, yeah.
Nervous than a cat in a room full of rocking chairs. There's beating a dead horse, which I feel like is just across the board. Everyone uses that one. There's the same nervous one, but it's nervous as like a sex worker in church. Though they use other words in the South that I will not use here. But there's a lot of colorful Southern phrases. It's we're big on turns of phrase. It's so much so that I think like I talk in weird little catchphrases. I realize not like real ones, but just like it's a sing-songy way of talking that Southerners have. That if you listen to the way they construct sentences, it doesn't make sense. It's like you could have just it's the longest way possible to get to where you're trying to go. And I realize I do it, and I for years have been working on not doing it. But I realize that there are just times when I'm like, just adding words in. I don't need them. I'm just throwing them in just for fun. Because why not? Let's just throw some extra words in. And it doesn't make sense. And I don't know why I do it other than just maybe it might be a my family thing. I don't want to put it all in the South, but it feels like it's a Southern thing because everyone in my family does it. And a lot of people I talk to in the South does it. But my family, my mom and my sister will just make a sentence that's supposed to be point A to point B, and they will drag that bad boy all the way to Z. It does not make sense. It's so many words, so many words. We love them, I guess. We love to say words. We're trying to use every word we know in every sentence. Yeah, no, there's a lot of little Southern catchphrases that are fun, and some of them are not so fun. Some of them are pretty terrible, but there's some that are pretty fun.
Isn't it like amazing how through the course of history, like just like when I sit there and think sometimes like people I know, where they're from, where they are now, and how we've all come together, like, and just the different backgrounds, the different, you know, uh, just everything, it's all very interesting, and it's, I don't know, like it's really cool to think that I know a bunch of people from different parts of the country. And then when I think of those different parts of the country and the history of that part of the country, it's like, it's amazing that we are able to be here right now, this point in time, in space, in, the history of our country, and be able to talk and come together and connect in so many different ways. It's I don't know, like it, several years ago, in my mental health, like depths of my depression and psychological disorders and things like that, like it's was madness. It was just complete chaos, and I didn't understand anything. And now that I'm here, I'm like, and aware, I'm like, the topic of this podcast was violence, but what I get out of it is that there's, throughout our history, there's been countless acts of violence. My notes here have tons of things about, World War II and all kinds of things, but like we didn't get into that. But like the atrocities that ourselves, as humanity, have um, been a part of, or even caused. It's amazing that, like, you and I, Jay, we sit here today and can talk and have a discussion about these things and look back and say, we've come a long way. Like, the shit is fucked up, like we've had some violent history and in all aspects of our lives, and we see different things. We have different perspectives, and I think the thing that I love the most is that we can come together and share our perspectives on topics like these things, and and just communicate, just be like together, and know that we are here together, and we
Oh,
like
agreed.
we are part of, we are responsible right now in this moment for the future, and that's why, like, everything I do now is like, what can I do to hopefully make the future better for other people? Like going to, I, I mentioned in the last episode I did a solo episode about, um, my wife and I went to a protest, and it was my first protest ever. It was about the Roe versus Wade thing, and it was about women's rights, like,
Mhm.
and health, and all that stuff. And I went to that, and I was like, why did it take me so long to be a part of a protest? Like, I felt like an activist my whole life, but I've also denied parts of myself that were very liberal and very emotional, and connected with people. And I was kind of stupidly um, conservative in early parts of my life that I didn't even really know the reason why. It was just because of the people around me that were like that, and I wanted to fit in, you know? So it's like now I'm like more aware, and I'm like, why would I do that? Like, why would I pretend to be something I'm not? You know? Like, I'm here, and I care about people, and I care about women. Women give birth to men and every other person, and it's, such a, I don't know, like the whole thing was just like eye opening, and
Well, I think it's
I've I don't
there's
know.
a there is a social psychology theory that is called standpoint theory. that I think is really interesting. I feel like it's, I want to say it's by Dr. Julia Woods, but I might be wrong, so don't quote me on that. But standpoint theory does this really cool thing where it helps us kind of look at how we perceive the world, incorporating both our own identities and power dynamics. So when you are looking at the world from, and by power dynamics, I'm really saying almost like privilege, right? So like when you are a man, for example, there are many things about being a man that we all 100% understand about men, because we're men, we are that, and if you come into that space or that realm or that domain, we get it. The thing that's interesting here is that women also have a very good understanding of men because they have to, because men are a threat to them. They pose dangers to them. Men control their governments. Men, in many cases, control their houses. Because of that power dynamic, there is a better understanding of women, of men, than there are of men of women, because men don't have to understand women. We kind of, unfortunately, control everything without understanding them, and have without the everything that man has come to control has come without us ever being like, well, let's try to understand women before we do anything else. Before we start a government, let's figure women out. We didn't do any of that, and we never have had to. And because of that, what standpoint theory really kind of argues is that that difference in understanding, without some effort from on our part, without a lot of in some cases some guidance from someone who has in a lower position, without that, you are inherently likely to just miss it. And it's not that it is not important, and it's not that you don't care. It's just that from your perspective, it's not something that you have to gain to move forward in the world. You don't have to gain empathy for a woman's plight to move forward in the world, to move forward as a human being, to move forward as a person. 100% need to have empathy for other people to do those things. But
Yeah. Yeah.
in our society, you don't really have to do that to be able to survive as a man. I don't have to understand anything about what a woman's struggle is, or about women's rights. I can go through my entire life without ever talking about it, or not even not caring, but without ever talking about it or having a conversation about it, or even like considering it when I vote. And my life will most likely be very much unimpacted. But again, for those who are in lower positions, they kind of have to understand the full game. And also they have to understand you, and also understand their own lives, because so much is riding on their survival. And I think, fortunately, what's happening, and I'm glad that it is happening, but we're starting to see is that there's just more awareness, particularly from people who are in positions of privilege, like us, who are men, who are starting to realize that there is a world of experience that we have not seen because of our privilege. And that once we see it, we can't unsee it, and that we have to take steps to make sure that the world that we live in, while I don't know if we'll ever achieve full equality just because we're human, I think we can achieve something that is damn near closer than what we have currently.
Yeah, I hope so, man. I really hope so.
You and me
It's
both.
it's I I don't know. I don't know where to go from here. I value your perspective so much, man, and I just hope you know that, and I hope that when we talk and stuff, it's I don't know, like I've said before in other episodes, where it's like there's so many things that have come up, and it's just like, wow, like I'm woke, and I'm like, I don't like that term, and other people are like, oh, why do you use that, or why does some people use that? And it's like, it's not, it's just, and you corrected me, or not, you added that it's just being a responsible adult and understanding, and I value that. I value your opinion, and your perspective on that, and that's what helps get me by. Like I want to be a good person overall. I want to be an ally to those who obviously don't see. I have my own family members that have gotten through life on white privilege, and it's just they don't see it at all, and they don't recognize the impact on everything, and it's sad. I've been talking to my niece lately about a lot of things. She doesn't talk to her mother anymore, who's my sister, who is fucking completely bonkers. My sister's, I don't understand her perspective on anything. It's very maybe bipolar or schizophrenic or something, but it's just beyond anything that, I mean, I've been through some fucked up mental health shit and PTSD and all these things included. It doesn't excuse behavior,
Yeah.
you know? And when I see other people out there like getting by with their excuses and actually getting ahead, you know, or using or manipulating other people to get ahead, that's when it really bugs me. You know, like I'm here suffering sometimes doing my own thing, but I'm not trying to use other people to, you know, get more money or get support in different ways for whatever, you know. And it's, my sister claims to be a PhD, a doctor, and I know for a fact she's never gotten a degree in anything. So it's like she's using people and manipulating them and being on talk shows and shit like that. And it's fucking weird, man. Like, how do people get by in life just straight up lying to everyone? It's fucking weird, man. Like, I don't get it.
Yeah. Unfortunately, I think it's. I understand what you mean. It's frustrating. I think some of the things to remember is twofold. I think I'm not
karma.
No, I'm not one of these people who, I was just going to say that I'm not one of these people who's like, the truth will come out. I'm not that person. I will say, however, that many people who oftentimes when you impersonate an expert, the key difference between you and an expert is that an expert has years of experience being an expert, whereas you are just impersonating that. So eventually, there's going to be a point where an expert will do or say something because of their experience, whereas you will not know to do or say that, and it will become blindingly obvious that you're not an expert. Having said that, I think that there will always be people in the world who lie. I have just resolved in my mind and in my heart that while I 100% cannot control them, I can control me, and I can make the resolution to myself that I will not lie and that I can do right by everyone that I meet. Because ultimately, at the end of the day, when I go to sleep, I have to only really worry about myself, and I need to be able to go to sleep with a clear conscience. And I would hope that, you know, when I die, I have some regrets. I keep saying I don't have any, but I got them. But I would hope that when I die, I can at least pass knowing, like, you know what, I did my best, and I may not have done always the quote unquote right thing overall, but I always tried to do the right thing. And my understanding may have changed over time, where I realized, okay, well, I thought this was right, but I know now that was wrong. I always can say that my intentions were correct, and that my heart was in the right place. It was never me being like, I'm out here to do harm. It was me trying not to do harm and maybe not understanding enough to avoid it. So I feel like that's really the only concern I have. As far as people who live their lives that way, like I said, if I see it and I can expose it, I will, just to help other people not fall down a cumbersome path. But in most cases, a lot of times what I try to do is control what I have, which is my life and my decisions. And I try not to spend too much time dwelling on the things that I cannot control and that I do not have. Though it is difficult.
It is, yeah. Definitely. All right, man. Well, I think we can wrap up here.
Okay.
Let's see, a special note to everyone about mental health. If you're struggling, don't give up. Your life matters and you are worthy of love and acceptance. If you need meds to get through your day, that's okay. If you need to take time to yourself, that's okay. If you're not feeling okay, that's okay too. Just don't give up. Please reach out if you need help. There's no shame in asking for help. We can't do this alone. We never should be alone. If modern technology and fast-paced modern capitalist society hadn't evolved to where it is today, then we'd never be alone. But the bunch of other crap I wrote down, I'm not going to say all that. Please just don't give up. Reach out to anyone because, you know, the reason of this podcast is to let everyone know that everyone has a place and we all have been through shit and it's difficult life. And I feel for all of you out there who may be listening or may not be listening. I hope you do listen. But if you are struggling, know that you are not alone. And that's the whole point. I just don't want anyone to feel like they're alone. And I want to offer myself. If you need to reach out to me, please do. I'm here to talk to anyone and everyone about whatever scenario is going on in your life. Jay, thanks for being on here again. I really appreciate you coming on and sharing your perspective. We have awesome discussions. I love having you on here. It's always I just love talking to you, man.
No, it's a lot of fun. I always have fun when I come with the show. I feel like we always end up starting off one place and ending in another place, but I'm always happy about the journey and how we got there.
That's what it's all about, man.
Yeah.
Traveling together, man. That's what life is, you know. We travel and we you know, even if we're sitting in one place, you know,
we're still on the same planet going around the sun together. It's
always a journey, you know, day to day. So everyone, thank you for listening to the show. If you would like to check out the social media, I have a link tree wormhole_manifest that has a link to all the social media sites and stuff. If you would like to email us, wormholemanifest@gmail.com, send us an email and we will try to get you on the show or whatever you want to do. If you have any questions, just reach out. Yeah, I think that's about it. So, any last words? Jay, do you want to shout out anybody or?
Shout out V.
V, yeah.
Shout out V. Always great to give V a shout out. And I guess also while I'm thinking about it, shout out to you. Thank you so much, and also Rachel. I haven't seen Rachel in a while, but shout out to Rachel as well. Hi. One more person. Let's shout out Rashani just because I haven't shouted him out in a while. So yeah, those are my shout outs.
Rashani.
Yeah,
man, I haven't talked to him in so long.
He's busy. He's got a lot of stuff happening. A lot of kids and a lot of irons in the fire. He's got.
I see that. You know, like it's just so. I was like so in touch with him like 5 or 6 years ago, and it was just like back and forth, and I was learning stuff, you know, and then I had like a mental break like 3 years ago or so, and I like cut him off for some strange reason, and I was like, what the fuck did I do? Like I cut off all these people that I actually liked, and I was like, why did I do that?
Yeah, it happens. Sometimes you're just making decisions and you're not sure why. I get it, but no, he's good. Last time I talked to him, I think his wife just graduated like nursing school. His son's in AAU. He's got a lot of stuff happening. His catering business is still going. He's got a lot of huge things happening. Podcasting still, I believe. So yeah, he's that was a great podcast too. The single simulcast. Yeah. Single simulcast is a really great podcast. But yeah, he's my brother and busy. We both always have too many things happening at once.
Oh man, I need to reach out to him soon. Like it's I was like having like a moment of clarity.
I'm on the show. You should just
like maybe a year or so ago, and I made this huge like public statement on like Facebook, I think it was, and I was like, I treated this person like I was a complete asshole. And, you know, it's because like him and my wife, Rachel, go back way back, and they were like friends, and, you know, and she like looked up to him so much because he's a great person, you know,
Yeah.
he's just a person that you can exemplify. And I felt kind of a jealous thing, you know, and it was like very dumb. And I was just like,
oh no, that's understandable.
I was like, you look up to this person and he does all this stuff and that's cool, you know, but like, what am I doing? And I'm like not doing anything, honestly, if I look back at myself, and I'm like, God, I'm just such a fuck up, you know, like what?
I think sometimes too, like, especially when it comes to relationships, we feel like we have to be everything to our partners, and that's not necessarily the case. You're not going to be everything to your partner because you're a human being and you can only be so many things. So like, I mean, you're not going to be, I mean, maybe at some point you will be Rachel's podcast hero, but at that point you weren't. You know, at that
Right.
point you hadn't begun podcasting. And so I think sometimes it's this desire to be like everything to your partner. Like, I'm going to be every human being you admire or care about. And that's just doesn't make sense because there are so many other people
Right.
that they admire and care about. So it's just, yeah.
And it's totally understandable because I was not in reality back then either, you know, like it just wasn't, things did not click, you know, the path from A to B was, you know, I'm going to go to Z first and then go to B. Like it was just all over the place and completely chaotic, and it's big mess. And that's why I say like mental health is so important. People need to take care of themselves, and we need to reach out and get help when we need, you know, if we feel it. It's like, it's so difficult, and it's a difficult path that we run down, and we make mistakes, but you know, we can't beat ourselves up. We need to learn from them and move on and do the best we can.
Yeah.
So
agreed.
Yeah. So, all right, Jay, thanks, man. We'll talk to you later. Great. Everybody else out there, thanks for listening. Check out our website and email and all that stuff. And we'll see you the next time around. Got lots of great topics coming up, lots of stuff on the schedule. So stay tuned.